It's 5:05 and welcome into a Monday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour on Charlotte's FM News Talk 107.9 FM WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. Well, much of North Carolina this Groundhog's Day is digging out from a major nor'easter that dumped record snowfall across all 100 counties. And while all 100 counties did not necessarily see record-breaking totals, every county in North Carolina saw measurable snow over the weekend. And this is the second weekend in a row that the state is braced for winter weather, with some of those record-breaking totals coming in the Piedmont and coastal plains. According to the National Weather Service, as well as citizens who provided a lot of the information and measurements to their various National Weather Service offices, portions of Carteret County led the state in snowfall totals, and for many communities in eastern North Carolina, this marked the biggest snowstorm since either December 1989 or March 1980. So it has been decades since many portions in the east, especially the northeast, have seen snowfalls like this. Couple of the highest totals across the state, according to the National Weather Service. 1 mile southeast of Pelletier, North Carolina, that's in Carteret County, a whopping 19.5 inches of snow reported there. In Reelsboro, that's in Pamlico County, again in the northeast portion of the state, 19 inches there. 3 miles east of Olympia, that's Beaufort County, 19 inches there as well. 1 mile northwest of Pelletier, 18.3 inches. Grantsboro, that's in Pamlico County, 18 inches there. Heading down to southeastern North Carolina, the Longwood community, that's in Brunswick County, 17.7 inches there. 17.5 inches in Craven County, 4 miles east of James City. 1 mile southeast of Minnesota Beach in Pamlico received 17 inches. In Onslow County, near Swansboro, 17 inches there, as well as a record total snowfalls were felt across the state of North Carolina. Those were some of the highest totals as of Sunday evening, according to public data from the National Weather Service. With the record amount of snow, especially wind as well in the eastern half of North Carolina, that caused many issues on the roadways, with the North Carolina State Highway Patrol reporting more than 1,100 total crashes and more than 1,600 calls for service since Saturday. Unfortunately, unlike the winter weather last weekend, where there, yes, were plenty of accidents and no fatalities, there are 2 fatal crashes that have been reported publicly thus far. Those happened in Robeson and Rutherford counties in North Carolina. During a Sunday morning press conference, Governor Josh Stein urged drivers, to remain off the roads as conditions remain treacherous across most of the state. The governor's warning was pretty clear: stay off the roads.
Our key message today is to stay off the roads. That way you'll allow the road crews and law enforcement to focus on their essential tasks to keep us all safe. DOT has 2,500 people out working overtime to try to clear as much snow today as they can. But our fear is that with temperatures staying below freezing today and much of tomorrow, many roads will be bad in many places across the state for days to come. We have a lot of miles of road in North Carolina, so it's going to take some time. And we're asking for your patience as our teams work around the clock to clear the roads. In addition, black ice is going to remain a risk throughout the week because of below freezing nighttime temperatures. For your own safety and for the safety of the people clearing the roads, please stay at home if you possibly can. This is no joke.
It is no joke. According to Governor Josh Stein, he highlights some of the treacherous road conditions that will persist potentially for the next couple of days. According to the National Weather Service, they're reporting that most of the state will stay in the teens and single digits in the evening and overnight hours. That is expected to last through Wednesday, which increases that risk of refreezing, which could turn many roadways into sheets of ice, especially this morning and tomorrow morning. A winter winter weather advisories in effect for much of North Carolina until midday today due to some of those freezing cold temperatures and hazardous travel. Looking at the forecast here from the National Weather Service statewide, some of the low temperatures expected Sunday night into Monday morning. So those just went through: 4 in Albemarle, 7 in Greensboro, 5 in Jacksonville, 3 in New Bern. These frigidly cold temperatures are playing out here across North Carolina. With that, the risk of sketchy road conditions does continue into portions of Monday morning and has prompted most schools across the state to cancel classes and shift to remote learning, as transportation and getting the kids there on buses could be a major concern. Governor Stein also highlighted some of these frigid temperatures as well.
We're also concerned about the cold, especially in western North Carolina, where the wind chill temperatures could drive us well into the negatives. This will increase the strain on the electrical grid tomorrow morning as people try to stay warm. Utility companies encourage all of us to be mindful of our energy use overnight and tomorrow, including turning off the lights that we're not using and avoiding using major appliances. If you lose power, wear layers and sleep with a lot of blankets. Know the signs of frostbite, like losing feeling and color in your fingers, and hypothermia, which creates uncontrollable shivering and disorientation. If someone in your home displays these symptoms, call 911.
Interesting note there from the governor about the power utilities. Many of you may have received a text message or email on Sunday from Duke Energy. That is the state's largest electrical producer and provider. They are, as the governor noted, urging customers to conserve power during what will be unusually high demand across the East Coast of the entire country, but here in North Carolina as well. The company is asking individuals to conserve energy between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. today. They are asking you to set your thermostat to the lowest comfortable setting, avoid the use of electric ovens, stovetops, dishwashers, washing machines, dryers, electronics, as well as space heaters, which can draw a pretty significant amount of energy as well. And Duke Energy is also asking those that drive EVs, electric vehicles, to charge those midday today. Typically, folks try and charge those overnight. That's when they can get the best rate from the power utility. However, due to the frigid cold temperatures this morning, Duke is asking those individuals to hold off and wait until midday. Fortunately, power is not really a major issue across North Carolina this morning in terms of outages from the storm. Only 420 customers without power, which is great news for the nearly 6 million customers that are tracked according to poweroutage.us. Only 420 customers in the entire state, the majority of them in Currituck County, where 120 individuals remain with the lights off this morning. I'll note 58 in Mecklenburg, 52 in Stanley, 22 in Dare County as well. So any of those outages, some related to the storm, some not. Duke is continuing, and their contract crews continue to get those repairs complete and get everybody turned back online. Speaking of the road conditions, the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Transportation, Daniel Johnson, talked about, fortunately, good statewide coordination and preparation from DOT crews, which noted roads are cleared in some areas. However, it is going to take a while in some other places as well.
I want to start by thanking our NCDOT crews, contractors, and other first responders who are working through this winter storm. A statewide storm like this takes an incredible amount of coordination, teamwork, and effort, especially on the heels of the one we are still recovering from last weekend. The good news is that this was a cold, dry snow, which makes it easier to clear than the ice we saw last weekend. The bad news is that as far as road clearing, we have record levels of snow in some areas of the state. Our crews were prepared, and we have sufficient salt supplies to address this storm. We're throwing everything we have at this, but it will take days, even in the least impacted areas, to clear the roads. In some areas, it could be up to a week before secondary roads are clear. Please be patient and please stay off the roads unless it's absolutely necessary. If you do have to drive, slow down and give other cars, our teams, and other first responders lots of distance. There are significantly more vehicles on the roads this weekend compared to last. Because of that, we've seen several roadway incidents across the state that were completely preventable. The last thing we want is for cars to be stranded on the roads with freezing temperatures and high winds.
That is one of the warnings there. That is coming from the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, making sure individuals are heeding some of the warnings there that were brought forth by Governor Josh Stein, emergency management crews, as well as the National Weather Service, as many roads are completely frozen over this morning from the winter storm that affected North Carolina. Highway 12, that is up in the Outer Banks, is closed and remains closed this morning due to hazardous road conditions and poor visibility. Very strong winds in the Outer Banks caused overflow, as well as the snow to completely take over Highway 12, which unfortunately is something that is not too uncommon. Anytime we see a strong coastal low, this does tend to be the case, as many portions of Highway 12 are at sea level, so it only takes one or two of those sand dunes to breach to cause water, sea foam, sand, and other debris to wash upon the roadway. DOT crews have been working around the clock. They remain clearing that road this morning, and the latest from drivenc.gov, which is the official website of the DOT here in North Carolina. They say that Highway 12 is expected to be closed through 5 p.m. today. That is only an estimated time. Crews will be out once daybreak hits and assess exactly what is going on there and determine how quickly they can get those roadways reopened. It is now 5:16 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. Speaking of the roadways, there's nobody better to keep us up to date with what is going on across the Charlotte Metro this morning. We'll get a traffic check with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. And we had
It's 522. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. As I mentioned in the last segment, you may have received a text message or email from Duke Energy throughout the day yesterday asking you to conserve as much electricity as possible between the hours of 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. today, Monday. They're asking folks to set their thermostats to a potentially a lower temperature than usual. Avoid the use of things like electric ovens, stovetops, dishwashers, washing and drying machines, and space heaters, other things that draw a significant amount of energy. Duke Energy was prepared for this and did request some waivers from the federal government, in this case the United States Department of Energy, to produce electricity at a max output. And with that, the U.S. Department of Energy has in fact granted an extension to an emergency order granted to Duke, allowing the company to operate at maximum output levels at all of their power generation facilities due to the extreme cold. This is, of course, following last weekend's winter storm on January the 26th. Duke Energy submitted a request under Section 202C of the Federal Power Act to Secretary Chris Wright of the U.S. Department of Energy. That order, fortunately, was extended through 12 noon on February the 3rd, so tomorrow, meaning that Duke is hoping to get through this cold string over the next couple of days. Riley Cook, a spokesperson for Duke Energy, told the Carolina Journal, in light of the extreme cold, Duke Energy is ensuring that every tool is available to protect energy reliability for our customers, which includes taking this precautionary step of requesting the 202C order from the Department of Energy. This is a precautionary step, and as of this morning, we have not needed to use it, but it allows us to use power generating units within our service territory to operate at their maximum generating output levels. Back on January the 26th, the Duke Energy submitted the request urging the Secretary to intervene by issuing an emergency order to, quote, preserve the reliability of bulk electric power systems, according to the letter sent from Duke. The power utility requested that the Secretary issue an order authorizing electrical generation units located within Duke Energy's service territory area to operate at their maximum generation outputs. Issued by the Department of Energy on the same day, they responded back and did accept the order and authorized Duke in all of their generating units, which are in their regional area, to operate at those maximum levels. And an interesting note about that is the letter reads in part, notwithstanding air quality or other permit limitations arising under federal, state, or local laws or regulations or other applicable sources of law. The original order was set to expire 12 noon on January the 30th. Fortunately, as I noted, it has been extended through 12 p.m. on February the 3rd. John Sanders, who is the director of the Center for Food, Power, and Life at the John Locke Foundation, said this emergency waiver helps Duke Energy keep the power on during this weekend's extreme cold, which means that families can keep their homes warm, their lights on, their stoves and refrigerators powered. And for those who live in the country, their water flowing as well. Temperatures this week are dangerously cold, so it certainly is in the public's best interest to set aside emission standards as needed to keep the power flowing. A similar situation occurred in the summer of 2025 during a heat wave at the end of June when Duke Energy submitted a similar request to the United States Department of Energy for that emergency order that authorized Duke to exceed those emission limits and make sure that they could keep folks' air conditions running. That was back, obviously, during the event in the summer. I don't think anybody's running their AC this morning. During the emergency order last summer, energy percentages were noticeable. Solar power declined to 19.6% due to some of the output issues there. Coal increased to nearly 30% of the electrical generation for Duke, with natural gas also increasing to 6.2% between January the 26th and January the 27th. Solar increased by 1.4%, coal by 10.5%, and natural gas by 23%. And you've heard many of the discussions here on the Carolina Journal News Hour as we've talked to individuals like John Sanders and other folks from the John Locke Foundation and Carolina Journal about the importance of these dispatchable forms of energy. Coal, nuclear, and other forms of energy like natural gas, which allows an energy provider and utility like Duke Energy to scale up what they are generating during either peak heat in the summer or frigidly cold temperatures here in the winter, like what many are facing across the state of North Carolina this morning. Other forms of energy like solar and wind, which many continue to push for across the United States, do not have those dispatchable characteristics available, meaning regardless of whether it is frigidly cold or brutally hot, they do not have the ability to quote-unquote turn those on or off. It is now, for many folks, if you're listening to us live this morning, it is pitch black outside right now, meaning that solar panels are generating no electricity, adding nothing additional to the grid. Wind, depending on where you are in the state, may or may not be generating this morning as well. So fortunately for coal, nuclear, and natural gas and other forms of electrical generation, including hydro, which is a very small portion of Duke's portfolio, they are attempting to keep the lights on across all of North Carolina this morning. Again, if you are just waking up, they are urging customers to avoid using anything that is drawing a lot of electricity, including your stove, your oven, if that is electrical, if that is getting its power through electricity, even things like dishwashers, washing machines, dryers, and space heaters. They are asking people between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. to conserve as much energy as possible. And if you are somebody that drives an electric vehicle, Duke is asking you to do that during the middle part of the day once the sun is shining here across North Carolina. It's now 5:29 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. We will get another check on very icy roadways across really the entire state of North Carolina this morning. We'll hone in on what's going on in the Charlotte Metro with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick.
It's 5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good Monday morning to you. If you are a frequent listener to the program, you've heard me and my next guest talk plenty of times about how lengthy legal challenges can play out across the state of North Carolina. We've got an example of one of those this morning, a 14-year-old lawsuit as it relates to the state health plan. To walk us through the latest in that this morning, Mitch Kokai from the John Locke Foundation joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Mitch, we're not joking when we say some of these things can take years to talk about. Here we are 14 years later. Take us back. What was going on with this lawsuit back almost 14 years ago?
Well, the reason this suit was filed, Nick, was that the state General Assembly changed a law and allowed the state health plan to start charging premiums for the health care coverage it was providing to people who were on the health care plan, including state employees and also retirees. And some retirees, a group initially of 26 plaintiffs, sued saying, wait a minute, we are vested in this state health plan, meaning we've served enough years to be members of it, and we were promised that this was always going to be free. That part of the perk of being a state employee is perhaps you're not going to get paid what you might get paid in the private sector, but you were going to get a retiree health benefit that would be paid for life with no premiums. So the case wound through North Carolina courts for a number of years. By 2022, the state Supreme Court issued a ruling that basically favored the retirees, but also had a lot of things that still needed to be played out in terms of courtroom action and how much money each person would actually be able to get because of their courtroom win. As all of this was taking place, you mentioned the fact that this is a long-running case. The lead plaintiff in this case was a retiree who had a very high-profile position, the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court, I. Beverly Lake Jr. And during the course of this litigation, Chief Justice Lake, who was the lead plaintiff, still the lead plaintiff, but he died. He died in 2019, so it doesn't really affect his retiree benefit, but it does affect, at least directly, a couple dozen people and potentially 220,000 retirees who had retired by a certain point and had been vested in the system. Now, one of the complicating factors of this case is the fact that people vested at different times. The state requirement about how much you had to work before you would get vested in the state retirement system changed. It initially was 5 years, then later it was changed to 20 years. One reason that the number of retirees is limited, even though it's 220,000, that's limited, but it's limited by the fact that almost a decade ago, the General Assembly changed the law so that there would be no retiree health benefit for people being hired moving forward. So this is only affecting people who are already on the system, already vested. And probably the most interesting development in this case is that now the state health plan, so state government, is trying to get the state Supreme Court to take this case again. And in their latest court filing, they basically said, look, the plaintiffs in this case are asking for $3 billion in damages. And so it's important to make sure that the courts get this right and that the state health plan is asking for the state Supreme Court to throw out a couple of different rulings, one of which is the old ruling that made this a class action case. They're saying, look, if you look at the details of this, there's so many different factors that affect each of the people involved that you really can't have a class action case. And the only way that you can get to this $3 billion number is if you treat these people who are potential plaintiffs the same when they shouldn't be treated the same. Some of them would not qualify. Some would qualify, but are at a very small level. And maybe there are some people who were vested who would end up getting a larger benefit. But that's the type of thing that can't be handled on a class action basis. And so the case really should be limited to the initial 26 people who filed suit, those of whom who are still alive and would be eligible. It's going to be very interesting to see what the state Supreme Court does with this case moving forward.
Mitch, this is not directly tied to the legal challenge that we're talking about this morning, but we've had some pretty extensive coverage over the last 8 or 10 months on CarolinaJournal.com about some of the major overhauls that have happened with the North Carolina State Health Plan, some poor financial decisions in years past, essentially just borrowing from a savings account to keep premiums subsidized for state employees across North Carolina, potentially put that system in billions of dollars worth of deficits in the coming years. Some major rate changes now here in 2026 for members that are a part of the state health plan. And as you note in the article over at CarolinaJournal.com, potentially $3 billion in additional dollars that the state health plan would have to come up with, depending on how this legal challenge shakes out. This is a major problem for a system that is already strained, and I would imagine many folks are not happy with some of those major increases in their premiums that they saw at the beginning of this calendar year.
Yeah, that's certainly right. Anytime there's the talk about increasing premiums, you always see the State Employees Association come out against it because, as we said, in years past, this really was mentioned as one of the perks of working as a state employee. Your pay might not be comparable to what is available in the private sector, although that has changed over the years. And some would say that state employees are paid just as well as they would be in the private sector. But certainly in years past, the argument about a state government job was, well, the pay is probably less than what you get in the private sector, but there's a lot more job security, and you're going to get these very generous benefits. But the benefits have become less generous as time has gone on. And you mentioned that price tag, the potential $3 billion. One of the things that's mentioned in the court filing is that's about what the state government has to pay for the benefits during a typical year. I mean, you basically, if you had to say this, you'd have to say, okay, well, a whole extra year of our payments would have to go just to deal with this lawsuit. And that's one of the reasons why the state health plan is trying to get the state Supreme Court to take this case. Now, on the other side, the argument from the plaintiffs has been, wait a minute, what's the state health plan doing? The state Supreme Court has already said the plaintiffs are the winners in this case, and this was supposed to go to a trial in March of 2025, but the state health plan filed a bunch of motions that ended up canceling that trial, and so they got the result they wanted, no trial. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if the state Supreme Court decides to take up this case and revisit to some extent what it had already decided in 2022. Remember, another political angle that comes out of this is that when this case initially went in front of the state Supreme Court, almost all of the justices said they had a conflict of interest and shouldn't hear the case. The plaintiffs said, wait a minute, this is such an important case that you should file or respond to this motion of necessity, saying that even if you have a conflict of interest, that the court should hear the case. And as it turned out, all but one justice ended up hearing the case. At the time, Justice Newby, who was Chief Justice Newby by that point, decided not to hear the case. This was when the court had a 4-3 Democratic majority, and you got a party line result. The 4 Democrats all ruled in favor of the plaintiffs in this case. The 2 Republican justices ruled against the plaintiffs. After the 2022 election flipped the state Supreme Court from a 4-3 Democratic majority to a 5-2 Republican majority, the state health plan tried to get the Supreme Court to take the case again and to revisit its ruling, and the state Supreme Court declined to do that. So now it'll be interesting to see whether the state Supreme Court, which has the same members essentially who declined to hear this case in 2023, do they decide to hear this case now again, or do they send it back to a trial judge and say, no, you're off base, state health plan, this needs to go to a trial? I think that it's a multi-billion-dollar question for the people of North Carolina.
And that's exactly the point I was going to make. You know, many of the legal challenges we talk about, many of the legal stories, yes, they have broad implications and broad impacts. But as you mentioned, Mitch, you'd be talking about essentially an additional year worth of health care coverage that the state health plan, out of the responsibility of the state treasurer's office, would have to pay out. This would be a major financial burden on the state of North Carolina. So obviously keep an eye on this. Do we have any idea, kind of a loaded question, Mitch, any idea what the timeline will look like on this going forward? Does the Supreme Court have a deadline as to when they have to respond, or how do we see this playing out in the months and years to come, I guess?
Yes, and it's already, as we said, played out over 14 years and is likely to last a while longer. The state Supreme Court does not face a deadline. My suspicion is because this case was supposed to go to a trial in March of 2025, that the Supreme Court will want to have some sort of ruling in the coming months rather than years about what to do moving forward. But if the Supreme Court decides to take the case, and that decision could come as early as the end of this month, but might not be for months on end. If the Supreme Court takes the case, then you have to add more months in for new briefings in the case, and then probably an oral argument, and then it could be another year or so before you'd have a ruling. So if the Supreme Court takes the case, I think you probably have to add at least another year into some sort of final resolution from the Supreme Court. If it doesn't take the case, it would go back to the trial court. My guess is then a new trial would be set, and that would mean probably more months. So we're talking at least months for this to be resolved, if not years, and maybe potentially several more years. One thing we do know is true, that as this case moves forward, the lead plaintiff is listed as former Chief Justice I. Beverly Lake Jr., who has been dead since 2019, which is all you need to know about how lengthy this case has been.
Yeah, and of course, the possibility that as this continues to go on, that $3 billion figure potentially could continue to rise as well as some of those changes relate. You can read some additional details and coverage of that this morning over on our website, carolinajournal.com. We appreciate the insight and information this morning. Mitch Kokai from the John Locke Foundation joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:48 on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. We'll head back to the traffic center, get another look at the roadways on your Monday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick. We have
It's 5:54. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Charlotte's FM News Talk 107.9 WBT. As much of North Carolina is digging out of the snow after a major nor'easter dumped record-setting snowfalls across many counties in North Carolina. Interestingly, all 100 counties across the state, from the mountains to the coast, Virginia to South Carolina, all of them saw some trace amounts of snow throughout the weekend. And this, of course, is the second weekend in a row that the state braced for winter weather. According to the National Weather Service, this was record-breaking in areas in the Piedmont and coastal plains, with portions of Carteret County leading the state in terms of snowfall totals. 1 mile southeast of Pelletier, North Carolina, that is in Carteret County, just a couple miles north of Emerald Isle. The highest snowfall tally reported there at 19.5 inches is the official report coming in to the National Weather Service, making this the biggest snowstorm for the eastern half of the state since either December of 1989 or March of 1980. The North Carolina State Highway Patrol was in full force over the weekend and reported more than 1,100 total car accidents and 1,600 calls for service. Unfortunately, 2 fatal crashes happening in Robeson and Rutherford counties. Governor Josh Stein hosted a Sunday morning press conference, and the message was very clear from the governor: stay off the roads for the coming days.
Our key message today is to stay off the roads. That way you'll allow the road crews and law enforcement to focus on their essential tasks to keep us all safe. DOT has 2,500 people out working overtime to try to clear as much snow today as they can. But our fear is that with temperatures staying below freezing today and much of tomorrow, many roads will be bad in many places across the state for days to come. We have a lot of miles of road in North Carolina, so it's going to take some time. And we're asking for your patience as our teams work around the clock to clear the roads. In addition, black ice is going to remain a risk throughout the week because of below freezing nighttime temperatures. For your own safety and for the safety of the people clearing the roads, please stay at home if you possibly can. This is no joke.
The National Weather Service reports that the state will stay in the teens and single digits in the overnight hours, at least through Wednesday, which, as you just heard from the governor, increases the risk of refreezing, which already has turned many roadways across the state this morning into complete and total sheets of ice. A winter weather advisory is also in effect for much of the state until midday today, due to some of those freezing cold temperatures and hazardous travel. We've got the list of the top 10 snowfall totals across the state this morning over on our website, carolinajournal.com. That story's headline: North Carolina begins cleanup following historic snowstorm. That's going to do it for a Monday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. I'm Nick Craig. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on Charlotte's FM News Talk 107.9 WBT.